Hello, listeners and viewers of Strange Oddities podcast. Welcome to another episode this week, another live episode. I have an awesome guest to introduce to everybody. But before we introduce this awesome gentleman that everybody should probably hear about, he's pretty well known, widely recognized, and I can't wait to start the show with him. But before we do, guys, if you don't know already, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to that little bell icon at the main YouTube channel at the top, that little bell, hit that, you're subscribing. Um, all the news and information about upcoming guests, if you want to find out what the topics and guests are going to be every week, go to Facebook, follow us on Facebook. I'm also live not only on YouTube, but I'm also live on Facebook. So it's simultaneously live on both social media platforms. We also archive our audio on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you can get Strange Oddities podcasts, and all older episodes are stored over there. All right, guys. Hopefully, I got the chat nice and working tonight. I'm hoping to get a lot of questions, and we'll get some comments from our listeners and viewers about our awesome guests. I'm going to tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about our guest because they should know a little bit about him before we welcome him onto the show. Here we go. So we'll go to his bio, and I'll read a little bit here. Here we go. Mr. Belanger is one of the most visible and prolific researchers of folklore and legends today, a natural storyteller. He's an award-winning Emmy-nominated host, writer, and producer of New England Legends series on PBS. It's a very cool series. I'm so into that show. It's like, I don't know why it's not mainstream, but it's a great show. Check it out. It's also on Amazon Prime and is the author of over a dozen books published in 6 languages. He's an adventurer. I can't believe he actually climbed Mount if I say this correctly, Kilimanjaro in Africa. And he's also explored the ruins of Machu Picchu in Peru. He searched the catacombs of Paris, France, where he encountered his first ghost. He's also the founder of ghostvillage.com. Guys, if you're in the paranormal, you guys remember ghostvillage.com. Everybody went to that website. Well, Mr. Belanger was the founder of ghostvillage.com. He also is a lead researcher, writer for Ghost Adventures. He's in the New England area, and I don't know. He's been on Coast to Coast. He's been on tons of TV shows and radio shows, Coast to Coast AM, History Channel, Travel Channel, you name it. He's been on it. He's a funny guy, great energy guy. He's one of the good guys out there. So I want to go ahead and bring him in, and here we go. We have Mr. Jeff Belanger. Welcome to the Strange Oddities podcast. I'm excited to have you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no, awesome. You're an adventurer. I can't believe that you've jumped out of an airplane.
So, okay, here's why, though. I mean, when I grew up, I've had a fear of falling my whole life. It's called,
Wow.
so falling, not heights. I can be up high. That's okay. But I have this fear of falling. It's a weird thing. And I think it started, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and my dad was building this retaining wall by our driveway. And I was standing on the top of it. Felt like 100 feet, but it was probably like 4 feet, but I was little. and my mom's screaming, "Don't, you be careful, you're going to fall." And I fell, right? I don't know. Ever since then, I've had this fear. So on my birthday, I think I was 44. When I turned 44, I was like, you know what? Like, how do I deal with this? And so I'm like, what's the worst fall you could possibly ever have? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to jump out of an airplane. And so, and I did it on my birthday because I figured, things when you jump out of an airplane, it either goes perfectly well or you die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you sprain an ankle, right? Like this is all or nothing. And so, I'm like, I'm going to face this thing. And I went up, whatever we did, 14,000 feet and jumped this plane that looked so rickety that I was like, you know what, jumping out may be the best option anyway. And faced that fear.
Yeah, that's great. And how many people could say that they've faced a fear like that? It's not often that. Well, it's more common now that people jump out of airplanes, but
sure,
it's not like the movie Point Blank where Keanu Reeves is flying without a parachute, and
Not only did I have a parachute, I had a person, right?
Yeah,
Like I was
yeah,
just a I was just a passenger. You know what's funny though? I've never been so aware of my body weight. Like when you walk around, you're just walking around, you're fine, right?
right,
Whatever, you're
right.
totally used to it.
Yeah,
But
gravity.
when you're falling at terminal velocity, right, about
Yeah,
125 miles an hour, like you feel every ounce of your body getting sucked to planet Earth, and you're like, oh my God, and it was something. I'm in
yeah.
no rush to do it again, but and I'm still afraid of falling. Didn't
Wow.
cure me.
Yeah,
But I feel like maybe I stared that dragon in the face and it got a little bit smaller.
nice, nice. Yeah, when you're jumping out of an airplane, a perfectly good airplane, and you're looking down at the ground from that high up, yeah, like you become literally like this small.
Have you done it?
No, no.
So it's you don't get a lot of perspective for a while, right? It's
Right,
just nothing but big wide open earth. It's not
right.
until you get much lower and then the chute deploys that you start to see some detail and realize like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I don't know. And the funny, and when it was Dover, because as soon as you're on the ground, they're like, all right, take the harness off. We're done here. Get out, leave, and you're just like, okay, right. And I got in my car and every pore, I just sweat. Like I just like total. And I said every swear. I invented swears that aren't going to be around for years to come yet. I invented them. I just everything just blah, 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 holy blah, blah, blah.
nice.
And then I drove home and I said, all right, I did it.
Yeah,
I did a thing.
yeah. Jumped out of a plane and I lived.
And I lived. I'm lived to tell the story. So there
There
was
you go.
that.
Yeah,
I don't, but I kind of feel like, as we get older too, you have to do stuff to shake it up,
right.
like, I don't know. I mean, how old are you now? Like what's
I'm 45, so I'm not
yeah.
getting any younger.
No, none of us are. And so
Yeah,
like, so you get in your 40s, right? And you've got your life, your job, family, whatever, maybe you're not, and everything is sort of like a rut, and it's a rut of our own design because by this age, like, we've
you get a little slower.
but not even that, but it's like you've sort of, you're doing what you're doing, and
Yeah,
you got to really force time for yourself, right? Because your job takes up so much time, your family, your home, your regular chores, getting the oil changed or whatever you got to do, like the stuff we all have to do every day, laundry and dishes and all that crap. And like you find less and less time to carve out that piece of yourself. And so
right.
whatever that passion is that you have,
Yeah,
you really got to make time for it, and force it, because you're just going to keep getting older.
yeah,
And so I know for someone, it's paranormal, right? We on weekends
right.
we go out with a team and we look for ghosts or whatever, and that's the thing that really revs our engines. And I get it,
Yeah,
like I get it.
yeah.
I remember I've heard people in the past complain like, it's just thrill seeking. I'm like, damn right, damn right, it's thrill
Yeah.
seeking. I'm in.
People don't know what it's like when you like. First, you're fortunate if you have a paranormal experience,
Yeah.
but when you have that experience, people don't understand. Like no matter how long, and I tell this to everybody, no matter how long you've been investigating or in the paranormal, no matter how many investigations you've done, you can't describe the adrenaline and the emotion and the mental status of yourself when you have that experience. It's so hard to describe. You can describe it, but in detail, it's so like everybody's experiences are so different.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah,
But they're also unforgettable. You know
right,
what I mean? Like when
right,
you have that experience, and um I appreciate people with a skeptical point of view, and I respect people that say, "Hey, I don't disbelieve in it. I've just never had it happen to me." That's a
right.
fair position, right? Like
Sure.
that's totally fair. To say, I don't believe in it, therefore it can't be. That's not logical, right?
Yeah.
You could say I've never seen the Indian Ocean. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Like a billion plus people live around it.
Yeah.
Just because you haven't seen it, that's a little egocentric. So I think, but when you have that experience, when you experience something that just doesn't compute, right? You get down to like that primal part of who you are,
Right.
and you try to make sense of it. And
Yeah.
we turn to our logic, and if that fails us, we turn to, we turn to the next thing, maybe our religion, and then we turn to just the most base parts of who we are and say, okay, I have no word for that but ghost or alien or monster, Bigfoot, cryptid, whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
we put a label on it and we say that's the best I got,
Yeah.
and then we move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I told Jeff this before we went live, and I want to tell everybody that's listening and viewing that one of the things that really stands out to me about Jeff is that he's so humble about what he does that like you hardly hear of anything bad. And I'm not saying he's a perfect, person or anything like that because we're all far from being perfect. But I love his good energy about him and what he does with his work. And I can't believe that he climbed one of the tallest mountains in the world, and I know a little bit about the inspiration that went behind that, which is kind of a kind of sad story in a way. If you want to get into that a little bit, because I know
Sure.
there's a big thing about that. Maybe tell our listeners who don't know who Jeff is. If they don't, I'm going to smack him in the head. But maybe tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what got you going in this field.
So I grew up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, and that's an old New England town. We had lots of old houses around town and haunts. And I also grew up in the town next to Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I knew them since I was like 13 years old, and would see Lorraine at church, would see them in the grocery store. They were local celebrities, the local ghost hunters. And keep in mind, like that's back in like the mid 80s, right? Ghosts were still in the closet back then, not like
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
Today, you can wear your paranormal investigation T-shirt to the
yeah,
grocery store, and someone will pull you aside and be like, "Oh, my house is haunted," right?
right.
Not back then. And so, I'd go see their programs at libraries and stuff around October, and I just thought, "Wow, this is the coolest thing." And so I went to school to be a writer and started writing for newspapers and magazines. And around October, you go looking for features on haunted places. So I started writing about haunted places back in the mid 90s. And then it's turned into a website called ghostvillage.com in 1999. 1999. It was
Wow,
23 years ago. I've
this
been
seems
running
like
that
so
website.
long ago.
I know. I've 23 years. It's so I just I put up a couple articles I'd written, an interview with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I said, "Tell me about your ghost experience." And then like every couple months, someone would write in a story, and I just put them up, and then more and more, and then it just sort of grew. And then I started writing books, and then Zach from Ghost Adventures reached out in 2008 and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone that knows haunts all over," and I started working on that show that was supposed to just be 8 episodes. And then one day I kind of woke up and I went, wow, I mean, paranormal is my full-time job now, which is amazing. Like I'm so lucky to be doing that. And I've been doing it full-time since 2004.
Yeah,
So it's been, an incredible run. I'm so grateful. I've met amazing people. I've gotten to travel to great places, uh, and it's so cool to be at a point in my career where if there's some story that just won't leave me alone, like it just gnaws at me, like, oh, I really want to know about that. I want to look into it. Like I can find a way to get there and do it and put it somewhere, whether it's a podcast or in a book or on a TV show, whatever it is. Like, I can have the resources to chase my passions, and I'm just so lucky to do that. And I love it. I love the way these stories connect us.
hmm
They connect us to the location, obviously, but they also connect us to each other because
yeah,
it's such a touchy time, as you know. When you start bringing up things you believe in and don't believe in, pretty quickly people are sussing out who you voted for. And when we're like, if we could put that aside, let's just talk about like death and dying and the afterlife and haunts and like what else is out there in the universe, stuff that I think all of us think about it to some degree.
yeah.
And I find that these stories might be our last hope to find some common ground. We're all going to die one day. It
Right.
doesn't matter who you voted for. We're all going to
Yeah.
croak.
Yeah. Just a matter
So
of when, just a matter of what day.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've always been sort of like this paranormal spiritual person. And to get back to the question that I practically forgot about, you'd asked about Kilimanjaro. So
Yeah.
a few
Like what
years, well,
inspired you? Yeah.
yeah, so it was back in 2015. My brother-in-law Chris was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer,
Yeah.
and it was this diagnosis that was just like out of nowhere. I mean,
Yeah.
none of us saw it
Yeah.
coming. We were just, he
My
was
heart
losing
breaks.
some weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like one of these things where you're like, what, and then the doctor says you have 2 years to live, and you're just like, no, like what, I mean, how, and during those 2 years, he and I got a lot closer. Because I mean, I was close to him, but not so close. I didn't live with him. He could call me and be like, "I'm going through some really weird stuff," and as he said, I know you're into some weird stuff, and so we talked about dying. We talked about it for like a year plus, and by the time he got to the very end and was just, really struggling, he was in hospice care. He was back home. He's on, oxygen, and it's just more or less like we're down to hours, maybe days at this point. And I got to talk to him for a long time. I mean, I went down to Connecticut to see him, and it's strange when you go to a visit like that, because it's not a visit. This is that big goodbye.
Right.
And it's so strange to like walk into a room and be like, when I walk out of this room, I will never see him alive again. And I knew that before I went in. And so you just kind of don't want to leave, you're just like sort of hanging around like, wow, it's really final as soon as I walk out this door. And but we talked about great stuff. We talked about, just he was having these out of body experiences, and he would talk to me about that, about how he'd see things like his cat from childhood, and he saw his grandma, and
Wow.
And he just felt like there was something inside of that broken machine that was getting ready to break out and stay out. And then I left and gave him a hug, and it was like 4 days later he died. And my nephew's 5 at the time, and I just like, holy crap. And what do you do? And I mean, he was just a couple of years older than me. And it was a few months later that I was at a paranormal event doing this fundraiser for this historic preservation. And a friend of mine from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society said, hey, we got this fundraiser going. And I was like, oh, Amy, I'm so busy, but I'll help if I can. She's like, we're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money to fight cancer. And I was like, man, I took Swahili in college, which is the language of East Africa. I mean, I've been a hiker. Like, that mountain's been on my radar for years and years. And so I was just like, do something big on my bucket list, do it in his memory, raise money to fight cancer. I was just like, yeah, Amy, I'm in. Like, this is happening, and this is happening right now. And I trained, and I ate well. I took care of my body. And in March of 2017, we went over to Tanzania, and it took 6 days to get to the top and 2 more days to get back down. And it was just absolutely life-changing. And I wrote a book about it called The Call of Kilimanjaro, which, it's weird. It's the first book I've ever written that's about me. Like,
nothing paranormal, kind of paranormal, but
yeah, I mean, elements, sure, because that's who I am, right? But the crazy thing is, like, I've always written other people's stories. I'm good at it. I know what to leave in and what to leave out. And with your own story, man, it's really a challenge to be objective when it comes to yourself, and to be really as honest as you possibly can, because people smell it. People smell when you're trying to make yourself out to be some hero or whatever, right? You're just like, I just want it to be like stripped down, naked, and honest. And like, boy, talk about vulnerable, like, like if I write a ghost book and you're like, oh, this book's stupid, and I've seen those reviews, I'm like, it wasn't your taste. We didn't click, right? You like a different kind of book. But if you're like, this is stupid, I'm like, oh, you think I'm stupid, right? This is me. But the whole experience from deciding to do it, training to do it, doing it, processing it, writing about it, talking about it has been just one of the most profound things I've ever gone through. It's made me a better person. And it's made me more spiritual. And I wasn't not spiritual before that, but it's really changed some things.
Sure. I definitely feel like after I've entered the paranormal field many years ago, and especially as I get older, I'm more and more spiritual. I think the older you get, the more spiritual you become. But when you have such an event, a life event like that touches you more inside, and I can really respect that, and that's so honorable of what you did for him. And my mother-in-law, who I was very close with, my wife's mom passed away from cancer. She had stage 4, and we knew it was just, we had, again, just like you guys, we had hopes that going through chemo, she'd fight, she'd stay a little longer. But then, like, we knew that time was going to come. And, like you say, you don't know when that last goodbye is going to be. And, it's life-changing, because it's nothing like losing that person that you're so close with and that you've shared those moments with. Like, you'll still have those memories and things inside your heart, but that'll never leave,
No, of course. And I everybody complains when they lose someone, like, oh, I didn't get to say goodbye, right? That's the number one complaint. Well, I've had it both ways. And you can make a strong argument for either one sucking worse than the other, right? Like the natural order of things is that you're not supposed to say goodbye, right? The natural order of things is that it is supposed to be a surprise. You're not supposed to know when someone is going to die.
Right.
And so, which is, I mean, there's a story in there, right? There's a moral, you know, like, so if there's people you care about, let them know all the time. So the last words you spoke to them were, I love you. I care about you. Thank you. You know, good to see you, right? Some kindness, part with that, so that you don't have to have any regrets, you know?
Yeah.
That's the, I guess that's the only takeaway on that. But yeah, no, that goodbye is so big and so profound.
Yeah.
When you know, like, wow, this is it. We're down to days or hours here, and you don't forget it. But at the same time, it's funny, right? Because if you're a paranormal investigator, like, death is the elephant in the room,
Right. Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like if you're there looking for ghosts,
Yeah.
someone had to die to get you there, right?
Right.
And so and yet death is so awkward. We think about it in our society. It's just this uncomfortable thing, even though every one of us is going to do it, and every one of us is going to lose people close to us, all of
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
100%, without you know, exceptions. And one of the things I did in the last few years, I became a hospice volunteer. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was just kind of like, and I don't want to, I mean, I guess it could be perceived as selfish. I wanted to learn more, you know, I wanted to be around it and
That's
say,
not
well,
selfish. That's improving your knowledge.
I get, yeah, I guess, but you know, I mean, I spent some real quality time in and when you're a hospice volunteer, your only job is to talk, and I
Right.
could talk all night, right? Like, so you talk, you listen,
Right.
you know, you just let people tell their story and say what they got to say. And it was pretty profound experience. But I remember one of the women that was, you know, worked for them full time. She was sort of telling me, she's like, you know, people die pretty much the same way they lived. So if someone's like a grab the bull by the horns kind of person in life, they're gonna go down swinging, right? They're gonna
Mm.
be like, let's go to the rodeo, let's do this, let's do that, let's jump out of an airplane, and if I die on the way down, fine, you know.
Mm.
And if you're more passive, more laid back, like that's how you're going to treat the dying process. And it
Right.
was really interesting to see when this great equalizer, right? When people actually get the notice it's coming,
Yeah.
how different folks deal with it. So
Sure.
yeah, and you of course you ask yourself, like, how would I deal with it if I knew, right? I don't want to know. Please, I don't want to know, right?
Oh, we always say that. I want to die in my sleep peacefully, you know, or
Yeah.
I don't
Or
want to know.
or you know, like going up on a rocket or something. I was thinking, like, when Shatner went to space, right? Whatever, a couple months ago, I was just like, man, oh man, the guy's done it all. And if that rocket blows up, and I was not wishing that or anything, like, God forbid, but I'm like, Jesus, he's done everything, right? Like,
I can't help it, but I actually was thinking the same thing.
yeah, you're like, what you have wrung the wet rag of life dry, Mr. Shatner. You know,
Yeah.
well done. You
Yeah.
have done it all.
Yeah.
Uh, that was cool. It was a cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what way? Not that you want to go out that way, but what a way that would have been if he did.
Yeah, no, I could live with that. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm that old and I've done that much, and I'm getting like, oh, let's try this experimental rocket. Why
Yeah.
not?
Why
You
not?
know,
I only have so much time in this world, and why
yeah,
not?
kiss your grandkids and be like, hey, look, if I don't come
Yeah.
back, throw a party, and I mean it. Like, I
Right.
mean it. Don't cry.
Right.
Just throw a
Right.
kegger. You know.
Well, in some religions, you know, not that I want to get into religion too much, but in some religions, death is more of like a celebration,
Sure.
and it's a celebration of where they're going to go next,
Mhm.
because their life here is done, but they're going to go to another life of theirs that's just starting, and it's a new journey, and they kind of explain that within that, whatever theories they have in their religion. After we pass from this life, they're going to start a new life, and it's more of a celebration of remembering them and remembering how they lived here.
When I was in Peru, I got to experience a few interesting things surrounding, like, you know, death rituals and stuff like that. So one, um, the Inca people would mummify some of their relatives
Right.
and put them in these dry caves where they would be mummified,
Hmm.
which is fine. They're not the only culture to do that. But like one day a year, they would go fetch their relatives and bring them down for festivals and feasts. And so, I mean, imagine that. I know you cared for your mother-in-law, and that's wonderful. But like, the old cliche is mother-in-law, right? Right.
Right, right,
And so imagine mother-in-law is still there.
right,
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 like you bring the body down, and then also we got to go to some beautiful cemeteries there in Peru. We were in a little town called Andoalias up there in the Andes, and um,
very cool.
there's tons of like wine bottles, beer bottles, food, right? Because you would literally commune with the dead, your relatives, right? You go
Right,
there, bring flowers, sure, but also like food, and you would sit and have a picnic with your grandma or your great grandma, maybe even someone you never met, like who died before you were born.
right,
And so there's this sort of like closer connection, not making it so awkward or scary, but like, no, it's okay. We're gonna go have a party with great grandma. And I thought that's actually kind of cool because I feel like, I think about myself, my dead relatives who are in the ground. Like once we put them in the ground, we don't really visit. We just
right.
don't.
Yeah.
And I always took the position, and I stand by this. Like they're in my heart. I don't need to go look at a cold stone, in a
Right,
field somewhere to think about my grandparents. I
right.
mean, they're with me. Like that.
Yeah, they're
That's
watching over us.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I believe that. I really do. But at the
Yeah,
same time, like going to the cemetery has never been part of my family's traditions.
right.
We didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm alone.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely not. Because I always say to my wife, I want to visit my grandmother back in PA. She's buried in back in Allentown. And my grandfather, he was a vet. He served in World War II.
Hmm.
So they buried them together at the national part of the cemetery where the soldiers are buried. And once in a while, I would get this like little kick in the ass, like from my grandmother, spiritually saying, "Come visit me. You haven't visited me in a while. You got to come visit me." You know,
And which is funny because right, like uh, part of the reason that I believe there are spirits and that we have something that goes on and survives death is because I remember being young and going to funerals of relatives, right? And I remember seeing my grandfather in the box, in front of the funeral parlor, and I was like, wow, it doesn't quite look like him. I mean, it should. It should look like he's sleeping, but it doesn't look like he's sleeping. He
right,
looks like not my grandfather. And the reason for that, I believe, is that because my grandfather isn't there anymore, right?
right,
That's just the shell that was left over. He's gone. He's moved on somewhere. Um, I think every funeral I've been to where you can see the body, it just doesn't look like a person. I mean, of course it does. I'm not,
yeah,
but it's like, but you can tell there's this key component that's missing.
yeah.
And I remember one time, oh, dear Lord, one of the many reasons I may go to hell, I guess. But we were at a funeral for a witch, a witch of Salem, and he died. He died too young.
Hmm.
Had some medical issues, and it was a witch's funeral inside a traditional, funeral parlor. But it was this witch funeral where there was like a human skull, and they had all these ceremonies and things.
Oh
And there
wow.
were several paranormal investigators there, and I had dared one of
Did they
them.
bring equipment with them?
That was the dare. I said, I dare you to bring an EMF meter, right? And my buddy, I'm gonna call him out right here. My buddy Ron Kolick was sitting there, and like it's just okay, everybody, we're gonna start, a prayer service. If we could just get quiet, and everybody sits down, and it's just getting quiet, and I hear, do 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 do. He's got his little cell meter or whatever, and I'm like, oh, Ron, and so I just reach into my wallet and I give him the money, and then the audio recorder when you go to kneel down and pray in front of the casket in front of the body,
Right.
and this is like doing EVP up there. And by the way, I know this sounds so crass or whatever, but if you knew Sean, the guy that was, that we were commemorating here, that was
Right.
in the box, he would have been the first one to say, do it, do all of it, get a Ouija board on the casket, get this, get that, put EMF, EVP, let's do all of it, right? And so, in a weird way, I mean, it was such a weird funeral to begin with, but why not? We
Yeah,
did. We
why
busted
not?
that stuff out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not weird. I mean, my wife and I sometimes when we visit her mother in her cemetery where she's buried, we'll bring a recorder with us because we'll be like, you never know, and we try to communicate with her mom, and we don't get much. Sometimes we get maybe a little something, but we're not quite sure because it's just so like not there to pull out and excuse me, to pull out enough to clean enough to where you can hear it, very
Sure.
well. But I'm sure people try to do that all the time, especially paranormal investigators. We're probably
So
all guilty.
So no, I get I've talked to some people that develop some of the equipment that we've all used, and
Yeah,
um, if you could have a telephone to the dead, right? Like let's say an app for your phone where you could literally be like, no, I want to talk to this person, like my grandma or whatever.
right,
Is that a good idea?
right.
It's rhetorical. I'm asking. Like, what do
Oh,
you would you do it? Would you, if you could have a two-way call, same as a phone call, would you do it
I probably would.
with a relative?
Yeah, with a relative.
I mean, with a stranger, Abe Lincoln, absolutely, no question, I'm on it, right?
Right.
But with a relative, I mean, I guess it depends how much time has passed, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because like if you lost someone a couple months ago, you just you're grieving hard still. You know what I mean?
Sure. Right. Right.
And I know lots of people
Family,
seek out,
right.
yeah, and people seek out psychics and mediums shortly after losing someone, and
Sure.
I know many, you know, the better psychics and mediums will tell you no, right? Not yet. You can't do this that soon.
Yeah, there's like some kind of weird rule. They're like, yeah, you have to wait a certain amount of time. Like,
Well,
why?
that's a
Why?
good rule. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for a death to really get normalized, it takes a whole turn of the calendar. It just
Yeah.
does. You have to get through the first everything. The first birthdays and holidays and whatever special days you had with that person. Like you got to get through all those things. Your first birthday, their first birthday.
Right.
And not that you're cured after a year, but at least it's normalized a little more.
Sure.
And so, I don't know. I struggle with that. Like I think about it a lot. Like, if that technology was truly available, is it a good idea, or would we never be able to move on?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah, I would be like, not just my relatives, but I would be like, yeah, asking all the important, prominent figures of the world that I want to know answers of things,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Like who killed Kennedy, or like,
You're right. Yeah. Let's get into it.
where's Jimmy
Who was at
Hofstra?
Roswell?
Yeah,
Yeah. Where's the UFOs? Tell me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? But
Yeah.
guys, just real quick, we're with Jeff Belanger, of New England Legends, and he's all over the place, all over radio, TV. He's got numerous books out. He's climbed mountains, jumped out of airplanes. He's an adventurer. So I'm just letting our listeners know those who are tuning in late to the show. We started this interview. We're having a blast talking about many different things, his inspiration to his book. And we have a couple of people in the chat. Want to say hello to everybody. Raylene Ball. I don't know if you know any of these people.
Hey,
Uh,
Raylene.
yeah, Shaw Reynolds, if I pronounce her name correctly.
Yeah. Good to
Yeah,
see.
what's
Those
up,
are some of
ladies?
the New England Legends regulars.
There you go. I want to say hello to the peeps in the other chat. We have Ronnie, of course, my wife, is moderating the chat for us, and Debbie Lobel is our co-producer of Strange Oddities podcast. She helps me co-produce, gets guests, and gets me lots of research and stuff like that. Want to give her a big shout out. Jeff, if it's okay with you, I promised the gentleman that knows you very well that I would give him a big shout out. Mr. Chris Quarantino wanted me to. We're kind of good friends. Wanted me
Yeah.
to give a shout out. And 5 years ago, he was in Washington. He wants to know if you remember that because I think he said something about you being there or something. And I
I
don't know.
was not in Washington 5 years ago.
Okay.
I try to avoid Washington.
Yeah. But anyway, he wanted me to bring it up, say hello to you, and I promised him I'd say hello to.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris. One of the most paranormal things that's ever happened to me happened with Chris Quarantino.
Oh wow.
He and I were at this conference in Gettysburg, and we went to the bar as we do after the days was done, and had fun. And then on the way back, there was this really long hallway, and there was some office chairs, like rolling office chairs, right? So there was some office chairs at one end, and I'm like, Chris, let's have a chair race. He's like, yes, let's do it. We both had drinks in our hands, right? And so the way you do a chair race is you both put your back to the long hallway, and you just shuffle your feet and you run backwards, and whoever gets to the finish line first wins. So Chris and I are going, and Chris has got a drink in his hand, and the wheels get clogged up almost like 3/4 through the race, and both of us just go ass over tea kettle tumbling, right? like full on 360 tumble. And Chris, with his drink in his hand, it was like, he's upside down and like a gimbal. He managed to keep it right, like he's down, he falls, and the drink didn't spill a drop. And I looked at him and I went, that's the most paranormal thing I've ever seen in my life. It should have spilled everywhere. There should be drink on the walls and on the ceiling. And you did a full, tumble, and that was amazing.
Yeah. Kind of like if you ever seen the movie The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy, and he had to walk those like tall things across the floor, and there was no bottom. And if he spilled any of the water, he'd die or something.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So no, but Chris is great, and fun to hang out with, and of course has an incredible story tied to Long Island, where you are, of course, Amityville.
Yep. For those who don't know about him. Yep.
Yeah. No. Another time, Joe Chin from Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International.
Right.
We were on a plane to Michigan, and like practically all the speakers were on this airplane, and Joe Chin was sitting next to Chris on the plane, and I was sitting like right next to them, and Chris was being polite and just like, oh, how did you get into the paranormal, Joe? And Joe's like, well, I grew up in a haunted house. And I'm like, go ahead, Joe, tell Christopher Lutz about your haunted house as a kid. And Joe just puts his head down. He's like, I'm sorry.
That's classic.
It was Joe's funny. He took it in good spirit, but it was just kind of a funny moment on the plane.
Yeah, no pun intended in there.
Yeah. No, that's good. Good to hear from Chris.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so, big shout out to him. What are you? All right, when it comes to New England Legends, your television series on PBS, what are some of the most favorite things so far that stands out to you the most? The favorite legends that you've done so far for that series?
Gosh, so with the podcast, which we've done every week. I mean, 231 weeks in a row. And I know that because today's podcast day and episode 231 came out today, right? So it's, and every week's a new story. But one of the coolest things that's happened is like we have this community of people, and most of the story leads now come from the audience. So someone will write to us and be like, hey, have you ever heard about this weird rock or whatever? And I love how we sort of hold on to things here in New England. We preserve our buildings, we preserve our history, we care about our rocks. I don't know why. I can't explain why, but I can just tell you we do. And we seem to just put such emphasis on certain things. And I love that we just sort of accept that, we're sort of matter of fact about it. So some of my favorite stories are like, the roadside oddities, the weird things that we've kept. Plymouth Rock, I think, is just an incredible story because everyone's heard of it. Right. And if you've ever been there, I voted the nation's number one in the nation. There's nothing above it. Most underwhelming national landmark. Because you get there and you're like, that's it. And you're like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's just a rock.
But the backstory is so great, right? The reason all this trouble for this rock, there's these pillars above it and this thing, and it's 1620 is etched in it and all this stuff. And it was almost 100 years after it was like 100 years after Plymouth Rock, after Plymouth, the landing at Plymouth, that they wanted to build this wharf in Plymouth. And this really old guy in town said, oh, no, you can't build the wharf there. That's Plymouth Rock. That's where they landed. And that's where they stood. My father told me this, and his father wasn't on the Mayflower either, by the way. Right? It was just told, this is where they stood and said, this is the new land and da-da-da-da. And we got to preserve it. And this one person was passionate enough that they said, all right, we won't build the wharf here. And then eventually they broke the rock off from the side of the thing there, and they moved it to Town Hall. It broke on the way, broke in half. They cemented it back together. They moved it down to the beach. And over time, and once the revolution started, they needed a symbol and that became the symbol and da-da-da-da. And so here's a funny thing. Matthew, what do you know about, boats and being on the ocean and things like that?
All I know is that there was a whaling time. You fish on boats and all that.
You know what? Let me stop you there. You are expert enough. Now, let's pretend it's today, modern day, like you're out there, and you have a wooden rowboat that you're taking onto shore.
Right.
and you see some rocks in front of you, and over there you see beach. Crazy question. Where would you aim your boat?
To the beach.
Right.
Right.
You wouldn't go to the rocks
Right.
because nobody would. They would shatter and you would get hurt and you might even die. And that's what they didn't do either. They landed on the beach because that's
Wow.
what you do. You
Right.
land on the beach. And so it's impossible that they landed on that rock because nobody not today, not then, not ever.
Right.
You know? And so it's so funny, but whatever, the story got so powerful that like the rock is now practically, I mean, now that it's a national monument, let's face it, it's sort of sacred.
Yeah.
Right?
It is, yeah.
And all it was one old guy saying, "Yeah, no, don't build a wharf there." That's where they stood. And on such hearsay, such little, but whatever, it caught on.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like a legend to me is like a living, breathing thing. It's the thing that's bigger than the thing. And so when I talk about haunted places or whatever being legends, I'm not suggesting there's no such thing as ghosts or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying there's a story that takes over that becomes bigger than the thing, you know?
Right.
Roswell. I mean, so many, I mean, Amityville, like, you know, you drive down Ocean Avenue there and you look at the house. First of all, 6 people were murdered in that house. That really happened.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you look at it and you're like, whoa, that's the Amityville house, right? Like that's the grand poobah there, you know? And that's because the legend has become because of movies, right? Like, well, Hollywood wouldn't make a movie if nothing happened here.
Yeah.
You know, and it's bigger than it could have ever been on its own.
Right.
And that's the legend.
Yeah, exactly. Now, since you bring up Amityville, one of the things that I feel bad for the neighbors of Amityville, not only the homeowners that live there now, but of all, you know, the people who follow that legend of Amityville, that go to the house, that want to visit the house to take pictures, all the paparazzi, all the newspapers or whoever, journalists, you know, you have no idea how many people stop there. We were there not that long ago. We did respectfully and lawfully. We parked in a legal spot, away from the house, you know, so we wouldn't get in trouble or bother the neighbors, and respect the neighbors, of course. But there was these one group of kids, of course, that got to ruin it for everybody. They pull up, they get out of their car, and they're like all excited, you know. But they actually stepped foot onto the property, and I was like, "Oh, we got to get out of here now." I'm like, "I don't want to get the cops over here."
Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah,
right.
But even the people that do it lawfully, like, and I same as you, I stood on the sidewalk. I did not go on their property, you know, not at all. I wouldn't, not without an invitation. But it is legal to be on the street. It's legal to be on the sidewalk. But what people don't realize, like these houses, first of all, they're expensive houses. They're like $1 million homes. It's a really nice neighborhood, and they're close together. I think people picture Amityville. They picture like this house on a hill all by itself. But no. I mean, what do you think? 50, 60 feet between houses or so, right?
Right.
I mean, maybe a little more, right? But not a lot, you know. And like, so this is a tight street, and wealthy people who, you know, don't like this kind of stuff. But too bad, man. If you buy the house next to the Amityville house, you're in. That's what you're in for.
I know. That's like buying a house like right across the street from a school, and you know you bought a house right across the street from the school, and you don't want high school kids walking on your property. Well, why did you decide to, you know, live across the street from a school?
I wonder, like, I understand if you buy the Amityville house, then you're buying a lot of luggage, right? Like, but you could be 1, 2, 3 houses down from it, and you still got to deal with it, right? And I don't even mean the paranormal. I mean you got to deal with, you know, people pulling up to the house all hours of the day and night being like, wow, that's the Amityville house. and so I've seen something really interesting. So I live near Burrville, Rhode Island, like maybe 30 minutes away. That's the Conjuring house.
Conjuring house. I've been there. Yep.
Yeah. So the funny thing about the Conjuring house is before the movie came out, nobody cared. Nobody stopped. You drive right by it. Absolutely an irrelevant house, right? Nothing at all. And then the movie came out. And I remember I was doing a library program talking about ghosts and stuff that I do every fall. And a woman came up to me and she said, "Hi, my name's Norma." And I was like, "Nice to meet you, Norma." And she's like, "I own the Conjuring house." And I was like, "Oh, that Norma." Right. And so I was like, wow, that's amazing. And the movie had just come out. And I said, "Would you be willing to talk to the audience tonight?" She's like, "Well, if it came up." And so I knew a kid in the front row that was coming to see the program, and I said, look, when I ask for questions, you shoot your hand up and you say, what do you think about the Conjuring movie and the Conjuring house? And he's like, okay, got it, good. And I'm like, any questions? He's like, phew. And I said, how cool would it be if the person who owned the Conjuring house was here? And they're like, yeah, that'd be cool. I'm like, Norma, come on up. and so I kind of interviewed her in front of the audience, and one of the things she was talking about, really unfortunate, by the way, was that she was older at the time. She and her husband were living there, and she said, it'd be like 10 o'clock at night, and she and her husband are watching TV, and they'd see these bright flashes of light. And they realized people were coming up to their windows and pushing their cameras right against the window and taking pictures at 10 o'clock at night. Wow. And then, people are ringing the doorbell at all hours of the day and night. And, here's the thing. The Perrin family got some money for that movie. Lots of people, the Warrens certainly got money for that movie.
Sure.
But the homeowners, the people that own the house, did not. The Amityville house was a stigmatized property. Before the movie came out, before the books, 6 people were murdered there. That happened. That there was already a stigma on the property.
Yeah, even before the house was built, all the history before that.
Right, but I mean, once you have 6 people murdered, like doesn't wash away. That stays with the house forever.
Yeah.
The Burrillville house had no problems. Then the movie came out, and it was a nightmare for the people that live there.
Right.
And now it has a stigma where there was none before, and so. I mean, I was waiting to see someone sort of try this in the courts. You know what I mean? Like, because that really interests me. Hey, there was no problem living here, and now there is because of this movie. What do we do? And of course they sold it, and of course it was put up as like a haunted, Airbnb, and I think it was just bought again, right? Someone just paid a.
Well, the owners that just bought it recently put it up for sale, so I'm not sure if there's a new owner now, but. I know it's still for sale for $1.2 million.
And I mean, that's a lot of money for that house. Like, I've been there. We filmed Ghost Adventures there. I got to go there. When the family moved in, I got to go there like the second night they were there.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, the Corey, he was like, hey, you live near here, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come see the house? I'm like, yes. And he's like, you want to come tonight? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And so I got to go down there and see the house, and I've known Andrea Perrin and I know Roger and everybody for years now. So I was working on a shock doc for Discovery about the story, and we were filming the interview.
You're also attached to a lot of shock doc episodes.
Yeah, I just filmed another one 2 weeks ago. I'm filming another one in like another week, so we're still working on them. But
cool.
So the interviews were taking place inside the Conjuring house. And so my daughter and I love the Conjuring movies. She's a teenager. It was one of her favorite movies, good scary movie. And so they called me and said, hey, we're going to do it at the Conjuring house. Can you come down for the afternoon and do this interview? And I said, yeah, that's cool. I said, but listen, I have some childcare issues that day. Can I bring my daughter? I have no one to watch her at home. Which, by the way, total lie, absolute lie. Was no problem. To leave her home or whatever. But I was like, Sophie, you want to go with me to the Conjuring house? She's like, yes. And I'm like, we're going. And so like, she hung out in the kitchen and stuff while I was doing my filming. And I was like, listen, whatever you do, make sure you use the bathroom while we're there, like whatever, take selfies. It's all good.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh, we were there for 4 hours. Using the bathroom was no problem.
You were her hero that day.
so as we're driving home, I'm like, you use the bathroom, right? She's like, yeah, I use the bathroom. Well, Dad, what's up? And I was like, you could tell all your friends you peed in the Conjuring house. And she's like, yes. So anyway, yeah, that was Hero Dad Day was getting her down to the Conjuring house. And one of the few perks of having me as a dad, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Corey and Jen, good people.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny because when I interviewed them, I had them on Strange Oddities podcast way back in the beginning when Strange Oddities podcast started. Because we kind of went over like our little investigation we did there with them. And as an interviewer, sometimes I have to think of really entertaining, tough questions sometimes for an interview to really be good. So one of my questions for Corey and Jen were, what do the neighbors think of everything ever since all that started to begin, Because again, just like the Amityville, I'm sure the neighbors of that house weren't too keen on what was going on. And So Corey was kind of funny with me, and even though like the interview went fine and everything, but he was like, "Next question."
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, that's such a small town, and
Right.
the movie, the crazy thing, like, that movie is so far off of what really happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I mean, I knew Ed and Lorraine growing up. I heard them talk about Amityville. I heard them talk about the Devil Made Me Do It case, because I grew up in Newtown, right where it all started. Brookfield
Right.
was the next town over. Like, that was down the street for us. I heard them talk about lots of the cases they worked on. One case I never ever heard them talk about was the Conjuring House, because it just wasn't really a big deal. It was
Yeah.
not a big and the reason I think the movie studio latched onto it was because Andrea Perron had written her books.
Right.
So like she had pretty well documented like her haunting experience, her family's haunting experience.
Right.
And then Ed and Lorraine Warren were there.
Yeah.
And some strange stuff happened, but then they were kicked out of the house.
Yeah.
Roger's like, "Get the hell out of my house, don't come back."
Yeah.
It's so and those are Roger's words, not mine. Like that,
Right.
he told me that. So anyway, so they never really talked about it, but Hollywood made this movie starting with the Annabelle doll, which had nothing to do with the house or anything. It was sort of like this side story, and then the Conjuring story. And whatever. Hey, you know what? Jeff, the paranormal investigator, thinks the movie's terrible. Although Lorraine Warren had a cameo in it, and I remember like the camera pans across this classroom, like, "There's Lorraine Warren."
Yeah.
And then but Jeff, the horror film buff, loved it. Like, I thought, this is fun, a fun, scary haunted house movie. The jump scares. My daughter and I were doing the two clap thing, where you go looking for like hide and seek. It was awesome. We a lot of takeaways. From
and like I love the movies too, and they're good movies in their own right.
Sure.
But far from the real story of what transpired there. I suggest for our listeners and viewers, please buy Andrea Perron's books, because her books are really get into what they experience. Here's a really good question for you, just since you've been there and you know the backstory to everything. Everybody that was involved. Do you think that the family's experiences are separate from the house itself? Because I feel whatever was there attached to the family more so than it was the house. Even though I do know that the house has activity, to an extent, but I think it was more surrounding the family than anything.
So, when I talked to Roger, when I talked to Andrea, they believed it was the Arnold family that was still haunting there, Mr. Arnold and Mrs. Arnold, who, by the way, like I found their cemetery. It's out in the woods. It's a family. We went out there, Corey and I, and went out and found the graves and stuff. So there's a funny thing that happens with a haunting, and I don't believe a haunting exists without living people, right? So ghosts aren't in a vacuum. We are somehow part of the equation. We're ingredients in the stew, if you will. So when the parents lived there, it was the right combination of people, time, and place that made this stuff manifest. Norma, who lived in the house, and when the movie first came out, and lived there for a long time, decades. She personally told me, like, that the house had some weird activity here and there, and she would later change that story. I believe because she was just desperate to get some privacy back. But she was on Ghost Hunters. Like, that house was on Ghost Hunters, like in early season 2 or something like that.
Right.
And it was just sort of like a small, quick story, weird haunted house in Burrville. And so, anyway, so something was there, but it seemed to be magnified when there was the Perron family. Maybe it's because all the young kids were in the house. I don't know. But by the way, same with Amityville, right? So when the Lutzes lived there, it, like, according to, and I interviewed George. It was one of the last interviews he ever gave before he died. I've talked to Chris about what he remembers. Weird stuff's happening in that house. They leave, and then someone lived there for years and years and claimed there were no problems, which, by the way, I accept as a possibility. I mean, some people just put on blinders, they tune it out, and it's not, they're not open to it, and they're not going to see it, and they're not going to, and those ingredients ruin the stew, right? Or make it better, depending on your perspective. Hey man, look, I'm into this stuff. And if you said, "Hey Jeff, I got a gift for you. Here's the Amityville house. You can live here." I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
You know, I'll
Yeah.
visit, I'll go in,
Yeah.
but I don't want to live there.
Yeah. My wife says the same thing. She's like, I don't know if I'd want to live in that house because of what happened.
Yeah, the
You know,
murders. Yeah.
and we're empaths, like, and for empaths to live in a house like that with that kind of energy, and it's like, yeah, I can't imagine what we would like be going through living there.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I wouldn't care to live where that many people, where 6 people were murdered, you know?
yeah,
I mean, that's yeah, that would make me uncomfortable.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I mean, you know, you'd walk down your hall on the way to the bathroom or something and be like, "Oh yeah, that's where those 2 little girls were shot and killed."
My
But
wife just said in the chat she wouldn't live there for free.
yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wouldn't yeah, forget it.
yeah,
But that's the thing, right? It's amazing because we've given a lot of power to these buildings, right?
right.
By fearing them, by acknowledging this bad thing happened. They were made into movies. The families had these experiences, and to me, like that's kind of the amazing thing about a haunt, right? It's to me, haunted simply means reputation. It means like we talk about this place and we don't talk about that place
Right.
because this place, and I truly believe there's some almost like paranormal catalyst that occurs because if nothing ever happened again, like the legend dies, right?
Mm,
Like
right.
like if months go by, years go by, and no new experiences come out of that building, eventually people are just going to kind of naturally stop talking about it, and then you won't really hear that it's haunted anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how these things work.
Right.
If they get reinforced, then we keep talking about it, keep talking
Sure.
about it, keep talking about it.
Yeah. And that's why we have people like Jeff doing New England legends, because we're keeping the legends and the legacy of those stories alive.
Well, it's I mean, but you know what's funny? Like I just sort of look at it as like it makes the radar. You know, it makes my radar, and people tell me about it or whatever. But it's the same with Ghost Adventures. I mean, shoot, been doing that since 2008. Every
Right.
episode, you know,
Yeah.
there's certain locations that just you know Zach's been dying to do, or you know iconic places that we've been to, and it's there is a literal pull, a call to some of these locations where you're just so drawn to them. I mean, you went to
Sure.
the Conjuring house, right?
Right.
You were like, I want to go there,
Yeah, I
and
did.
you did that because you wanted to be part of the story, and you are.
Right.
You've been there, you've stood there, you've investigated, and now you're part of the story forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely feel there's a calling because another place, for example, which I'm sure you've heard of, I don't know if you've been there, but Hinsdale House. Ever since I've seen Hinsdale House, I know Dan Class. I've known him for a few years. We've worked together on a couple of projects and whatnot, but great guy, owner of the Hinsdale House. But ever since before I met him and I seen that place, it called to me, and I was like, I have to go there. I don't know why, but there's like some kind of weird like energy connection thing going on there, and it draws you in, it sucks you in, and I can't explain it, but other people have the same experiences.
Totally, I'm the same way. I mean,
Yeah,
it happens to me like all the time. Like there's certain stories or legends or whatever where I'm just they won't leave me alone, you
right.
know. And the way I look at it, it's like it just gnaws at you. You know, it starts with like, oh, that sounds interesting, and
Yeah,
then you go about your day, and then you're eating lunch, and you're
yeah,
like, oh, I kind of want to see that place, and
yeah,
you're laying in bed at night going, no, I really want to get there. Like I need to see this, and it consumes you, and the only exorcism is to go there and check it out for
yeah,
yourself
yeah.
and see
Get
what you
it out of
see.
your system.
Yeah, no, but that's how I look at these things is that
Yeah,
if it doesn't leave me alone, I got to deal with it,
right.
and that's you
Exactly.
know that's what I
Yeah,
try to do.
yeah, exactly. We're working on a documentary about Amityville, and we've been doing a lot of research and stuff. And it's kind of in relation to what we're talking to about, having a calling or having certain experiences when you're working with things. The other night, I had trouble sleeping. I had a noise happen, woke me up. I have cats, so I'm thinking, all right, maybe it's the cats, playing in the middle of the night. They're 2 years old, so they still have a lot of energy to play around or whatever. So logically, I'm thinking, hey, it just could be the cats, right? So I get up, I look at my clock. My clock reads 3:33,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I didn't think of it at first until later on. I get up to get a glass of water from the kitchen because I was thirsty. Walk around, cats are asleep, so it wasn't the cats. And then I start thinking to myself, you know what? is that a coincidence, or is that like a calling as to something going on that's bigger because of what I've been working on? So does 333 stand for something else? Is it the Holy Trinity? Is it, you know what I'm saying? So like
Or is
the
it half of 666? I don't know.
right. So
I
it
don't know.
like
Yeah,
it just like got in my head, and I was just like, no, it could be just a coincidence.
could be, sure. But that's, and that's with anything, right? Like, so when we put our focus onto it, it can become a bigger thing. And we do that all the time. We,
Yeah,
we do
sure.
that in our lives in every way. You break a mirror one morning and
Yeah,
you're like, oh, 7 years bad luck, right? That's a long time to have bad luck, by the way, but it doesn't matter. And so
yeah,
like the mirror breaks and you go, I'm not superstitious. I'll just throw this mirror away and go about my day. And then
yeah,
later that day, you drop your coffee cup and it shatters and you
yeah.
go,
Oh,
huh, well, wait a minute now. I broke the mirror this morning. Now my coffee
right.
cup, and then you get a paper cut
Yeah.
later and you're like, paper cut, broken mug, oh no, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
and because that's what we do, we're people, we tie one thing to another and
right.
connect it and try to make sense of it, and then next thing you know, by bedtime you're afraid to touch anything because you're like, I'm cursed, I broke the mirror, what do I do, bad luck. But
Yeah,
sometimes disbelieving in a thing can cure you as well.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Almost like the laws of attraction kind of thing too. So like at the beginning of your day, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Secret,
Mhm.
but they would
I
say,
read the book.
yeah, the you know, I don't know how much people have read the book or watched the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
But anyway, the point of what I'm trying to make is like the start. What they would say is the start of your day. If you start your day off bad, then it's like trickle downhill, and the rest of your day is going to be like following that. So if you start your day on a positive note and you try to think of, good things, good vibes, good energy, and maybe the point of that is just maybe the rest of your day will bring better things throughout the whole
Yeah.
day. You know what I mean? So it's like energy is energy. Energy attracts other energies, and maybe there's something to that.
That's totally. There is something to that. And by the way, the secret I think can be best summed up by an example Mother Teresa gave, where she said, "I would never attend an anti-war rally. I would attend a pro-peace rally." Right. So you don't want to give energy even to the negative of something. Like you give energy to the positive of it, and there's a lot of truth to that. And I try to put my focus on those things as well. I understand. Like
Yeah,
I try not to give too much thought to the negative things. There's plenty out there. You don't need me to point them out.
yeah.
I'll just try to work on the things that bring me joy and that drive me, and that's the best I can do.
Sure. We're getting near the end of the show, but there was somebody that actually threw a question in the chat. So if you don't mind,
Sure.
Curly Girl. I don't know if this is an avid follower of yours or not, but she's listening. She's got a question. She says, "Jeff, the balsams in Dixville, Notch, I guess New Hampshire, if I have that correctly. Any legend stories you know of? Visited 20 years ago and felt as creepy as the Mount Washington, but I don't know of any legends there."
I don't know that one. I know the Mount Washington, certainly
Right,
been there and know
right.
those stories, but no, I'll have to look. I've not heard anything.
No,
Sometimes places are creepy. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Sometimes the day you're there, you get a creepy vibe. But
yeah.
yeah, no,
Basements are
sorry,
creepy. Yeah.
sorry, I don't know that one.
But Lauren Middleton wants to know where they can subscribe to the Strange Oddities podcast. They love to hear more of the podcast. Thank you so much for that question. Guys, go to the YouTube channel. Just look up Strange Oddities podcast on YouTube. There's a little icon of shaped like a bell at the top of the main page, and you just hit that and you're subscribed. So that's how you guys can subscribe to the show. Also, like us on Facebook because all the news of upcoming guests are all on our Facebook page. So, like, if you want to find out the next time Jeff is on our show, because I would love to have Jeff on the show again in the future, because I just had so much fun in this interview.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it was good to be with you, and I
Yeah,
appreciate the opportunity. And I don't know. I think the discussion is the most important part. I don't have the answers. If I did, I'd give them. I would. I wouldn't hold out. I wouldn't hold out on you. I'd just
if
hand
I
them
had the
over.
answers, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd be on a
Yeah,
mountain somewhere, I guess, yelling them out. But I do think the discussion is important, and it's
sure.
nice to be able to talk about it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
yeah,
that's the best part about this, is that when we can like have those discussions, share these stories, our own experiences, and find the common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. What upcoming projects you want to share, events or things you're doing that you want to give a shout out to people, or plug anything? This is your moment.
Yeah, thanks. No, I mean, my podcast is still going, New England Legends. You can
Right.
get it wherever you listen to podcasts. You can subscribe for free, and that's such a fun thing to work on. I'm working on more shock docs, which is
Right.
great. We're filming. I don't know when they'll come out though. It'll be months, but it's cool to be part of that, and still working on ghost adventures, and still working on new books, and and if you go to my website, which is my name, jeffbelanger.com, you can see all the events I have coming up. Some are in person, some are virtual, and they're free to attend. They're sponsored by libraries and other organizations where I share some of the research and stories that I do, and I try to make them different every time. And the virtual ones, anyway, you can attend for free from anywhere. So you can just go to my website. It's under gigs, and you can find out how to sign up.
Nice. And if for those who don't know the website, it's jeffbelanger.com. And that's where you go to that. And, there's a menu at the top of the page that will direct you to all that information. So it's pretty self-explanatory on his website. Very nice website, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, very cool. I don't know, any exciting books that you're working on that you can maybe spoil a little bit of some things that you may be working on, or?
Yeah, so I every year I do a haunted New England calendar with a photographer named Frank Grace. He's great. We've done I think 8 of them now, 8 or 9, and he and I are working on a full color book of strange stories from New England. So but I mean, it's going to be a while before that's out and available, but it's cool to partner with Frank. He's got an incredible eye. His photography is just amazing. And so it's something I've always wanted to do, is just
Nice.
like a really cool book, like, so my stories, his photos, and so that's in the works right now. But
Nice.
yeah, there's always something. It's funny thing. Like I've told people, I'm like any other contract worker. You know what I mean? Like some contracts go for years, like Ghost Adventures. Some contracts are just a couple days, and I'm just so lucky that people seek me out now when they're looking for these kinds of weird stories. And so I was psyched to be working on a UFO story a couple of weeks ago for the shock doc that we were working on, and then the next one is something different. So it's just cool. It's cool to be able to do this.
All right, and one more quick question regarding Ghost Adventures. I'm sure a lot of fans want to know this. When's the next part of I think the latest season? They split up, right? They stopped, I think, at episode 6, but are they coming out with more episodes at any point in time?
Oh yeah, we filmed last week. So I just turned in. Yeah, they just filmed last week. We're working on the next one now. So here's the thing that people don't understand. We're always working. Like it's the train hasn't stopped. Like literally in 14 years now, right? The train hasn't stopped. The network sometimes holds back shows or Discovery Plus or whatever. They hold them back until like a certain amount build up or whatever. But we have nothing to do with that. We film them, they turn them in, and then the network does what they're going to do with them. So yes, the machine is still going for sure. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Ghost Adventures to me, even though it's TV, I'm a huge fan of Ghost Adventures because I just find everybody on the show very entertaining. No matter how you look at it, no matter what perspective, whether, there's people that'll like them or dislike them, but they're entertaining out of all the shows that are out there. I love all their characters like Aaron and Zach and Billy Tolley, Jay Wasley. They all have different personalities, and all the different personalities are so just fun.
Yeah. No, thanks. And I think one of the things that's always set Ghost Adventures apart is that some of the other shows, it's always bothered. I mean, but I also know how the sausage is made, so so you're watching a paranormal show and someone's like, I'm up here in the attic, I'm all alone, I'm really, really scared. I'm like, you got a sound guy up there with you got a camera guy up there with you probably have a producer up there with you. It's crowded in that attic, but our guys are also the camera guys when it's the investigation. So you really are alone. Like you're holding the camera. So it's really different than when you have a whole crew around you,
Yeah.
So anyway, but no, I've always appreciated that about Ghost Adventures, is that whole like that sort of like raw energy of just documenting and finding what they find as they go. But
Sure.
it's been an amazing ride. My God, 14 years is a
I know.
long time for
Yeah.
a TV show to go.
Yeah. What is it? 25 seasons now, I think.
I honestly, I know our internal numbers that we use, like for the each episode, and so
Right.
I don't even know what the network's calling them. So whatever you'd know better than me.
Yeah.
I just know our
I
internal
think
numbers.
25. Yeah.
It could very well be. But it's been hundreds of episodes, and it's been incredible. It's so neat to like be part of this thing that, you know, I was there on day one, and I was like, wow, 8 episodes, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And then like,
I love when you interrupt their investigation sometimes to give them information. They're like, "Oh, we got Jeff on the phone. He's trying to relay us some, important stuff," and there you are on the phone.
yeah, and you know it's funny, like when that happens, I mean, that's just real, because like I could be in the middle of dinner,
Right.
and they'll be like, hey, can we got to do this like right now in the next 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, let's go do it. So
Yeah. That's how Zach is. He's like, "No, we got to do it now."
yeah, no, that's how he is. He's very much like, he just goes with his gut, and that's how it's been. But it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it certainly has. So, guys, I don't know. We're gonna end it here. I don't know. What'd you think of being on Strange Oddities podcast? I'm putting Jeff on the spot.
Oh, come on. This was great.
It
was fun. Thank you. Good to talk to you. And thanks for everyone who's watching or listening. I appreciate it. It's, so it's just, I'm blessed to be able to share my story. So thank you.
Great. If you don't mind, we'll say our goodbyes after I end the show, with our listeners and viewers. I'll minimize you. And if you can hang around another minute, and then we'll chit chat a little bit, and then, I'll let you go for the night. But you got a lot of work ahead of you, so I don't want to keep you any longer. But again, I'm humbled. Thank you for being on the show. I wish you so much good luck with your future projects, and with New England Legends and all that good stuff, and your books that are coming up. Really, bravo. Pat yourself on the back for such being a good person in the field.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so guys, I'm gonna say goodbye to Jeff, and I'm gonna minimize him, and I hope everybody. All right. I hope everybody enjoyed our guest tonight, Mr. Jeff Belanger. I don't know. I've had so much fun tonight. My head is spinning. I'm a fan of his. I hope I was a good interviewer for everybody tonight, and not so much acted like a fan. I know I did a little bit of both. But anyway, I hope I did him and our listeners and viewers justice. I do want to announce, guys, next week I have a big guest. I have Eric Shawn, Fox News anchor. He's a weekend guy, but everybody's familiar with Eric Shawn. He's doing a big thing investigation on their new kind of like network app kind of like series, kind of like how Discovery has Discovery Plus. So they have Fox News has like Fox Nation, and they do like sideshows and series and stuff on there that has nothing to do with the news. It does, but different thing. But anyway, he's got a lot to do with some new evidence of possibly where Jimmy Hoffa is buried. So we're going to get into a lot of Jimmy Hoffa stuff. I suggest you do a lot of research on Jimmy Hoffa if you want to tune in next Thursday, January 27th. We'll have Eric Shawn from Fox News on Strange Oddities podcast. So I want to make sure I announce that. And I also have a gentleman from Treasure Quest from Discovery on the following week, and I'm hoping to schedule him. I'll make that announcement soon enough. But guys, I want everybody to be well, stay healthy, stay warm. It's cold out there. Winter's here. Burr, it's cold. I'm not a winter person. Guys, have a great night. I'm going to play our video. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in to Strange Oddities podcast.